In 1347, a messenger carrying the first sign of plague stepped into the castle courtyard with a sealed letter no wider than his palm. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and rotted leaves, each breath filling your lungs with the faint tang of mold and the distant echo of hushed voices. The floor beneath you creaked softly as footsteps passed overhead in the guard room above. What if that letter contained news of an impending siege? What if the only light came from a flickering torch casting eerie shadows across the walls? What if, in your role as a scribe, you were tasked with recording events just hours before they transpired? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. The candles flickered softly, casting an amber glow around the room as you settled into your duties, ready for whatever dawn might bring. The warmth of the hearth fire envelops you like a familiar embrace, its steady crackle and pop a soothing rhythm that lulls your mind into a state of quiet reflection. The air is thick, with the scent of roasting meat from the castle kitchen mingled with hay and straw from the stable beyond. You can feel the weight of your wooden bucket in your hands, brimming to the top with unpasteurized butter. It's been a long day, but there are still tasks left for you before you can truly rest. The butter is warm and smooth between your fingers, glistening faintly under the flickering light from the hearth. You've churned it all afternoon, watching the pale yellow liquid transform into rich clumps of creamy goodness through relentless motion. The task was tedious but necessary. Every castle household needed its share of dairy products to supplement their meager fare. You walked towards the butter room with a sense of purpose, your bucket held close as if holding an old friend. It's not much, just enough for tonight's feast and tomorrow's breakfast, but it feels like a small victory in this world where most days are filled with routine and monotony. The door to the butter cellar creaks open under your touch, revealing a dimly lit space that holds secrets of its own. The walls are lined with wooden shelves, each one holding rows upon rows of jars containing different preserves, some old and faded, others new and gleaming like glass jewels in the meager light. You set down your bucket carefully on an empty shelf, then begin to arrange the butter into neat stacks. The process is surprisingly meditative. You can almost feel the history of each jar through its layers. Each one has a story, whether it's a family recipe passed down for generations or something new and experimental from the castle kitchens. You stack your butter carefully next to an old jar of rose petal jam, both items serving their own silent purpose in this grand tapestry of daily life. As you work, the temperature drops slightly, making the air feel crisp against your skin. The shadows stretch longer here, casting strange shapes on the walls and giving the room a ghostly atmosphere that seems to whisper secrets from another time. It's easy to lose yourself in these thoughts, but you know better than to linger too long. There are chores yet uncompleted. You take out a small knife from your belt pouch and begin slicing the butter into thin slivers. This is part of the ritual. Each piece must be perfect for the evening meal ahead. You work meticulously, feeling the cold steel against your fingers as you carefully slice through layer after layer of creamy goodness. The sound of metal on fat resonates softly in the quiet room, a comforting echo that reminds you of all the hands who have held this knife before. Once done, you place the slices neatly into small ceramic pots and cover them with wax seals to keep them fresh for longer. Each pot is labeled with an inked pen, detailing when it was made and by whom, usually just your name and a date scratched out hastily in charcoal. It's a routine so familiar that it feels almost automatic now. Finally satisfied, you step back and admire the neat stacks of butter on their shelves. The room seems to breathe easier under your scrutiny. Everything is in its proper place once more. You take up an old rag from one of the hooks along the wall and begin wiping down a nearby shelf, feeling the rough texture against your palms as it cleans away the grime. As you work, there's something peculiar about this butter room. It seems to have a life of its own. The shelves creak softly under your touch, and occasionally an old jar will shift slightly in response to your movements, almost like they're trying to tell a story too. You wonder if perhaps, over the years, these items have gathered their own personalities, each one with memories waiting to be shared. The rhythmic sound of the hearth fire seems louder now, its steady beat providing a backdrop against which you can contemplate this strange place. Butter may grow molds unseen, but in the butter room, it's clear that life continues even when you're not looking. It's comforting and slightly unnerving at once, like walking through an old castle where every nook and cranny holds stories of its own. You finish your cleaning tasks just as dusk fully falls outside, casting long shadows across the floor. The cool air seems to have settled into a more permanent state now. You can feel it in the way each breath catches slightly on leaving your lips. You gather up your tools, knife, rag, and bucket, and head towards the exit. The door creaks closed behind you with another gentle groan, signaling that yet another day has come to an end here within these castle walls. As you make your way back through the corridors, the faint sounds of activity from other parts of the house start to filter in, a distant cry for a candle from one of the servants, or perhaps the clinking of utensils as someone begins preparing dinner. You find yourself lost in thought again, pondering over this peculiar place where butter grows molds unseen. In its simplicity lies a strange complexity, each day filled with mundane tasks, yet each one contributing to something greater than themselves. It's here that you realize how much history is woven into even the smallest details of daily life. It's not just about kings and battles, but also in these quiet moments where butter stacks grow higher and molds form unseen. As you continue down the hallway, the shadows seem less menacing now, perhaps because they're filled with stories too. You close your eyes briefly against their weight and allow yourself a small smile before opening them again to face whatever comes next. The journey through this castle is far from over. There are still countless tales waiting for you in every nook and cranny, ready to be uncovered by the light of another day. And so, with that slow, meandering pace that only nighttime can bring, you make your way towards your chambers, feeling both exhausted yet strangely content. The warmth of the hearth fire draws closer as it does each night, another reminder that no matter how long and trying a day may have been, there is always tomorrow to start anew in this castle where butter grows molds unseen. As you make your way through the castle's winding corridors, the torches flicker and dance in time with your footsteps, casting shadows on the ancient stone walls that whisper secrets of ages past. The air is cool, thickened by the weight of centuries, but it carries a subtle scent of butter, a pungent, rich aroma that clings to everything, an omnipresent reminder of this castle's unique nature. You pass through doorways carved from solid oak, their surfaces polished smooth by years of use, and notice how every room tells its own story. In one chamber, you find a tapestry depicting the castle's history in vibrant colors, battles won and lost, alliances forged and broken, all woven into the fabric of this place. Another door leads to what was once likely a grand hall, now little more than storage for old linens and forgotten treasures. The warmth from the hearth draws you irresistibly closer, as it always does at nightfall. You can almost feel its embrace before reaching out to turn the massive iron handle that creaks open after a long day of serving in this imposing fortress. The fire's glow dances across the stone walls, casting flickering patterns on the tapestries and illuminating the few remnants of luxury left within these chambers. You settle into your bed with a sense of relief, the softness beneath you grounding you against the weight of the world outside. Your thoughts drift back to the day's events, a series of meetings that felt like endless circles in an endless maze. The nobles' demands, the court's intrigue, and the ever-present specter of war loomed large over every conversation. But now, as you lie there, bathed in the gentle light of the hearth fire, those concerns seem far removed. Your mind wanders to simpler times, childhood stories told by the fireside, laughter echoing through the halls, and the simple joy of Butter's presence, so central even here among these ancient stones. You close your eyes, letting yourself be enveloped in a sense of peace. The fire crackles softly, its rhythm comforting as it mirrors the beating of your heart, a constant reminder that life continues, no matter how heavy the day may have been. In this quiet moment before sleep claims you, you reflect on the peculiar nature of serving within these walls. Butter molds unseen, growing in secret chambers only known to those who truly understand the castle's magic. These are the things you carry with you even as you drift into dreams that whisper tales from a time long past and promises yet unfulfilled. A small smile tugs at your lips as you settle deeper into bed, ready for tomorrow. In this castle, where butter grows in molds unseen, every day holds both challenge and comfort, challenges to be met with resolve, comforts found even amidst the most trying of circumstances. And so, as dawn begins its slow ascent through the stone walls, you welcome it not just with the promise of a new day, but also with the reassurance that here, in this place where magic resides, tomorrow will bring both hope and heartache anew. As sleep finally claims you, the fire's warmth lingers on your skin, a comforting presence until morning breaks to usher in another day within these walls. The soft creak of leather against stone greets you as your fingers brush past a heavy wooden door, its polished surface cool to the touch after the long day. You pause for a moment, inhaling deeply through your nose, musty air laced with the faint scent of candle wax and old parchment wafts from within. The smell is familiar, yet tinged with something new, as if the castle has taken on a slight dampness that hadn't been there before. You push open the door further, tilting it slightly to allow more light into your quarters, a chamber dimly lit by flickering candle flames dancing along the walls and ceiling. The air inside is heavy with warmth, thick enough you could almost slice through it with a knife. You slip in quietly, closing the door behind you with a soft thud that echoes briefly before fading. A small table sits at one end of your room, cluttered with papers and inkwells, a reminder of all the letters and reports that need to be written after this long day. Beside it is an iron-studded chair where you'll sit when you finally get around to those tasks. For now, though, you're more interested in easing yourself down onto a bench by the fireplace. The wood beneath your weight is rough under your fingers, centuries old and worn smooth from years of use. You run them across its surface, feeling a small knot that juts out slightly. As you sit fully on the bench, you notice how the firelight casts shadows along the walls, dancing patterns of light and dark that seem almost alive. The smell of burning wood fills your nostrils as you lean back, sinking into the warmth. The heat is intense here by the fireplace, but it feels good after a long day patrolling the castle's grounds or working in the kitchens where things got even hotter than this. You wrap yourself up warmly in your cloak and let out a contented sigh. The crackle of burning embers provides a steady rhythm as you gaze into the flames. Each one seems to tell its own story, dancing with the heat that radiates from them. You wonder about the lives of those who once sat by this hearth, sharing tales and plans for tomorrow's events. What secrets they might have shared while these same logs burned down through the ages. You reach out a hand to touch one ember, feeling its warmth even though you know it would be too hot if you actually touched it. The fire is both comforting and dangerous, a constant reminder of the balance that must always be maintained in this place, between safety and danger, between life and death. You run your fingers through your hair, smoothing out tangles from the day's weariness. As sleep finally claims you, the fire's warmth lingers on your skin, a comforting presence until morning breaks to usher in another day within these walls. But tonight is just for rest, just for letting go of all that has been done and all that still needs doing tomorrow. Tonight is about closing one chapter and opening another. You close your eyes slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion begin to settle over you like a warm blanket. Your thoughts drift away on currents of heat rising from the fireplace, carried gently by the steady rhythm of the flames. The last thing you register before sleep overtakes you is the soft hiss of candle wax melting into the stone beside your seat. And in that moment, as dreams begin to weave their threads through your mind, you are truly at peace, safe within these walls, sheltered from the outside world's endless cycle of day and night. Here, among the ancient stones and flickering lights, there is only this one instant, a quiet haven where tomorrow can wait just a little while longer. The fire crackles softly in your ears as you drift off into sleep, its rhythmic patterns soothing your mind and body alike. The weight of your cloak settles around you like an old friend, familiar and comforting after long hours spent on duty or work. In this moment, everything is still. The only sound is the whispering flame and the gentle warmth that seeps through every crevice of your being. As night fully takes hold outside, you relax further into the seat by the fire, allowing yourself to be cradled by its heat. The scent of wood smoke clings to your skin, mingling with the faint aroma of aged leather from nearby furniture. It's a strange mixture, but somehow feels right here. This is where you belong. The room around you seems less daunting now that darkness has fully fallen. Instead, it becomes filled with soft shadows and muted colors. The table at one end blurs into indistinct shapes, the iron chair beside your bench taking on an almost ethereal quality as light dances across its surface. Everything moves slowly here in this twilight realm. Time stretches out like a long drawn-out sigh. You stretch gently against the warmth of the fire, feeling each muscle relax under layers of clothing and armor. It's been a hard day, one filled with constant vigilance and endless tasks, and now all that effort can finally be let go. Your mind begins to wander, thoughts drifting lazily like clouds across an unclouded sky. What if the castle had never seen this much activity? What would it have looked like in its youth, fresh from construction, bustling with life, but free of the weight and history that now define every corner? You imagine its first occupants setting up hearths like these, starting fires to keep warm during long, cold nights. Would they too feel a strange mix of comfort and isolation while sitting by their own flames? Perhaps there are secrets locked within those ancient walls, tales of joy and sorrow hidden beneath layers of stone and mortar. What if the date on that stone is correct? And everything else is wrong, the castle not built for military might, but as a grand residence instead, filled with laughter rather than fear. These thoughts swirl around you like smoke from your own dying flame. They rise up into the air until they're lost among other memories and dreams. As sleep finally claims you once more, it's these small wonders that linger in your mind, reminding you of life beyond this single moment, just out of reach, but always there waiting. And so you drift off deeper still, surrendering to the comforting embrace of darkness. The fire continues to burn softly beside you, a beacon of light and warmth amidst an otherwise silent world. It's here that you find peace, safe in these walls, surrounded by stories both known and unknown. Here is where tomorrow waits patiently, ready to begin anew. As you fall into a dreamless sleep, your mind wanders back through the winding corridors and bustling halls that now seem distant yet familiar. The fire beside you flickers softly with each gust of wind from outside, casting long shadows across the stone walls. You imagine yourself as one of those who served within these walls centuries ago, your duties, your joys, and your fears intertwined in a tapestry of daily life. In truth, serving inside a medieval castle was far more than just bearing arms or tending to noble whims. It involved an intricate web of responsibilities that spanned from the mundane tasks of keeping the hearth alight through the night to the subtle arts of managing relationships and preserving secrets within the stronghold's walls. At dawn, you are awakened by the sound of distant roosters crowing in the village below. The first light begins to filter into your chambers, painting everything in a soft golden hue. You arise slowly, stretching as if awakening from an ancient slumber. Today is but another day, yet each one brings with it new challenges and familiar routines. The castle's secret passages are among those duties that require both skill and discretion. These hidden paths were more than just escape routes or means of surprise attacks. They were lifelines for communication between the innermost chambers and the outer world. The walls themselves seem to whisper secrets, their masonry groaning under the weight of time as you navigate through these tunnels. The longest secret passage leads from your quarters directly to the castle's main gate, a feat in itself considering its length and the labyrinthine turns it takes. As a servant, you are privy to this knowledge but sworn to secrecy. The passage is dimly lit by oil lamps placed at intervals along the walls, their light dancing upon stone that has seen countless footsteps over centuries. Tonight, as you make your way through these passages with the light of one lamp in hand, you pause momentarily before a particularly narrow section where the ceiling seems perilously close to brushing against it. The air is damp and thick, with an earthy scent mingling with the faint smell of old wax from the lamps. You move carefully, feeling for any hidden obstacles or pitfalls that might lie in wait. Reaching your destination at last, you emerge into a courtyard where dawn's early light bathes everything in hues of pink and orange. Here, amidst the bustle of preparations for the day, lies the true essence of castle life, service to both body and soul, blending together to form an unspoken code that has governed these walls since time immemorial. Your tasks today include fetching fresh water from the well, preparing breakfast for your superiors, ensuring the stables are clean, and tending to any minor repairs or maintenance. Each task is as vital as the next, forming a seamless tapestry of daily life within the castle's hallowed halls. As you return through the secret passages at nightfall, carrying with you news from the outer world in your mind, rumors, whispers, and fleeting glimpses of freedom, the weight of responsibility grows heavier. You are not just serving, you are part of a living entity that breathes life into these ancient stones, their stories etched deep within. In this castle's embrace, you find both solitude and companionship, isolation and connection, each day bringing new challenges and opportunities to prove your worth and loyalty. As the fire beside you crackles softly, casting dancing shadows upon the walls, you are reminded that in serving here, you are not just a servant. You are a guardian of history, tradition, and the secrets that lie hidden within these very stones. So as another night draws to a close, you settle into your bedroll near the hearth, feeling the cool stone beneath you. Tomorrow's light will bring new tasks and challenges, but for now, in this quiet embrace of darkness, you find peace, safe in these walls, surrounded by stories both known and unknown. Here is where tomorrow waits patiently, ready to begin anew. The gentle creak of an old wooden door resounds through the night air, a sound so familiar it almost feels like a lullaby. The weight of your sword in hand presses into the palms of your hands, a comforting presence that reminds you of your duty, even as the darkness creeps closer with each step. Here is where tomorrow waits patiently, ready to begin anew. Your boots thud softly on the stone floor, blending seamlessly with the echo of the night guard's shift starting. The air here is thick, with a mix of musty straw and damp stone, mingled with the faint scent of old leather from your armor. You can feel the chills seeping into your bones as you approach the main hall, where the fire crackles warmly. The glow of the hearth casts long shadows that dance across the walls, illuminating patches of cold grey stonework before they are swallowed once more by darkness. The warmth of the flame is a welcome contrast to the biting night air outside, and for just this moment, it feels like all is well in your world. As you step closer, the sound of leather on stone grows louder, your cloak drags slightly as if protesting against the intrusion of night into the castle's interior. The firelight flickers off the polished surface of a large wooden table near the hearth, casting dancing patterns across its smooth expanse. Beside it, a heavy iron keychain jingles softly, a reminder that you hold the responsibility for not only your own safety, but the entire keep. You pause momentarily, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light. The hall is empty, except for the occasional shadow cast by the flickering flames. No sign of the other guards or the lady who has her quarters on this floor. The silence here is thick and oppressive, a heavy weight that clings to you as if it might never release its hold. The scent of roasting meat wafts through from the kitchen nearby, a comforting reminder of the warm meal awaiting in your chamber later tonight. You take another step forward, feeling the cool stone underfoot, and your gaze drifts upward towards the stained glass window high above. The moonlight streams through, casting a ghostly blue hue over everything below. As you reach for the keychain, you feel the slight chill of metal against skin, a cold reminder that this is not just any night, but one where your vigilance might be tested. You slide the keys into place and turn them gently in the lock. This simple act feels like a momentary pause before an eternal wait. The door creaks softly as it closes behind you, sealing off part of the world from its intrusion. The light inside shifts slightly, casting longer shadows that dance across your face. You can feel the weight of the night settling around you, heavy and unyielding, like a shroud wrapping itself tightly about the keep. The warmth of the fire is almost comforting, as it offers a small reprieve from the chill outside. You sit down on one of the benches near the hearth, the hard wooden surface pressing into your legs with an odd kind of familiarity. The flame casts dancing patterns across your face, highlighting every wrinkle and shadow, making you feel both old and young at once. You reach out a hand to touch the flames, feeling their warmth seep through the tip of your fingers. It's not enough to keep them from chattering slightly as the night air steals what little heat they have left. The logs crackle softly in response, adding another layer to the symphony of sounds that make up this quiet moment. The hearth is surrounded by old tapestries, faded and worn with age, their patterns barely visible under the dim light. They tell stories of battles fought long ago, heroes who once roamed these halls, but tonight they are nothing more than silent witnesses to your presence here. You trace a finger along one, feeling its rough texture against skin that is no longer young. A small wooden box sits beside you, filled with items essential for the night: a flask of wine, a piece of bread, and a knife for self-defense. The air around it carries faint traces of the musty scent of aged leather, mingled with a hint of something sharper, a reminder that danger can come from unexpected places. You pour some wine into your mouth, feeling its warmth spread through you like liquid comfort. It's not much, just enough to ease the tension in your shoulders and neck, but it helps nonetheless. The taste is sharp, leaving an aftertaste that lingers on the tongue, a reminder of the world outside these walls. The sound of distant voices carries softly from another part of the castle, soft murmurs that are too faint for you to make out individual words, but enough to confirm that life continues beyond this moment. The thought is both comforting and a little unsettling at once, the knowledge that even as you sit here in relative quiet, others are going about their nightly routines. You shift slightly on your bench, feeling the cold stone beneath you, like a reminder of how short-lived warmth can be. A soft rustle from behind makes you turn slightly, catching sight of a small mouse scurrying across the floor near the hearth. It's so tiny and fragile in this moment, almost like it doesn't belong here, another fleeting presence that will soon pass. The air around you feels heavy with history, a palpable sense of what has come before and what might yet come after. The castle itself seems to breathe, its walls alive with the memories of countless nights spent by guards much like yourself. Each creaking floorboard, every shadow in the firelight, these are not just sights or sounds, but a lived experience that binds you to this place. You pick up your knife from the box beside you, running it over your fingers as if testing its weight and balance, a small ritual of reassurance before settling back into silence. The light flickers across the blade, casting long shadows that stretch out like invitations to explore further, though there's no need for exploration here tonight. The night is not yet fully upon you, but neither does it seem eager to depart. It lingers instead in a state of suspended animation, a moment frozen just before dawn breaks over the horizon. The air feels heavy with possibility, like everything and nothing at once. Here among the shadows and flames, there's an almost tangible sense that anything could happen next. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle into your bones, like a blanket pulling tight around you. The world outside might be full of dangers and uncertainties, but in this moment, it feels like everything is as it should be, a small victory over the unknown wrapped up in a single night spent guarding these ancient walls. As sleep begins to take its gentle hold, you find yourself drifting into dreams, visions of battles past and future, whispers on the wind that might just carry secrets yet untold. And here among the shadows and flames, under the watchful gaze of history itself, it's hard not to feel both humbled and a part of something greater than oneself. The night stretches out before you like an endless sea, quiet and mysterious at once. The air is cool against your skin, carrying with it all the secrets of the keep and those who have walked its halls in ages past. And as tomorrow waits patiently outside these stone walls, ready to begin anew, tonight feels both complete and incomplete, a moment suspended between light and darkness, safety and peril. Here among the shadows and flames, you are not just a guard, but an echo of countless others, bound by duty, history, and the unspoken language of night itself. Tonight's silence was not the hushed repose one might expect from a castle that slumbered through countless generations. Instead, it hummed with an almost palpable tension, as if every stone and shadow held its breath in anticipation. The torches flickered gently, casting dancing shadows on the walls, their glow barely piercing the deepening dusk that seemed to creep ever closer, eager for darkness's embrace. In the keep's heart, the great hall lay silent save for the occasional creak of floorboards underfoot and the distant murmur of voices. The air was thick with the scent of pine logs and roasting meat, a familiar comfort in this place where duty and danger mingled like seasoned wine. Here, the guards were more than mere protectors. They were keepers of a story woven from threads as old as time itself. A young squire named Elric stood at his post, his armor clinking softly against the cold stone floor. His breath puffed out in small clouds before him, vanishing into the cool night air. He had joined the ranks only last month, and though he felt a sense of belonging among these seasoned veterans, there was an underlying unease that gnawed at his resolve. Elric whispered a familiar voice from behind, sending shivers down his spine. He turned to see Captain Thorne standing just beyond the shadow cast by a nearby torch. The older man's eyes held a wisdom Elric, could not yet match with experience or age. "You've been here less than 3 months, and already you're thinking too much," Thorn said softly, stepping closer as if he could sense the young squire's anxiety. "Remember why we are here." Elric nodded, his fingers tightening on the hilt of his sword. "To protect," he murmured, the word echoing in his mind like a promise made to himself. "Exactly," Thorn replied, his voice almost fatherly as he placed a hand on Elric's shoulder. "And that means more than just standing watch. It's about understanding every creak of the castle and each flicker of light." They walked silently for a moment before Thorn continued, "Tonight, though, you might not be alone." His eyes darted around as if searching for something only he could see. Elric felt a chill run through him, but nodded. "I will remain vigilant," he said firmly. Thorn's lips curved into what may have been a smile in the dim light. "That's my boy." As they returned to their posts, Elric found himself drawn deeper into the castle's labyrinthine corridors and chambers. Every shadow seemed to hold its own story, of battles fought and won, of love lost among these walls, and of countless silent prayers whispered under cover of night. In a small keep on the eastern side, he passed by a tapestry depicting King Roland in his prime, his sword raised high as if to strike down an unseen foe. The tapestry was old, its threads worn with age but still richly colored. Elric paused before it for a moment, feeling a strange connection to the man whose reign had long since ended. Looking at history came a voice from behind him. He turned to see Sir Cedric, his mentor and friend among the guards. The older knight's presence was calming, as if he carried with him all of Roland's wisdom in every step. Sir Cedric placed an arm around Elric's shoulders. "These walls have seen much. More than any one man or woman can imagine." Elric nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "I suppose that makes us part of something bigger," he said, looking up at the tapestry once more before turning to follow Sir Cedric back towards the main hall. As they reached their posts and Elric took his place, he found himself no longer just a young squire, but a guardian of this ancient stone fortress. Each breath he drew was now intertwined with its history, each shadow beneath him part of a story that stretched far beyond his own life. The night grew long as the stars began to twinkle in the heavens above, mirroring the flickering torches within. Around them, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what might come next, whether it be the quiet of peace or the distant rumble of conflict. And so Elric stood his watch, not just with sword and shield, but with a heart full of purpose. For in this place where past and present met, he was both witness and guardian, a silent echo in an ever-continuing story that would span countless more nights to come. The first thing you notice upon waking up inside a medieval castle is not the dawn, but the stale air of night. It's thick and heavy, like the weight of cobwebs in your throat. You open your eyes slowly, feeling the chill that seeps through your thin woolen sheets, more from the walls than the night itself. The stone floor beneath you is cold, a stark reminder of why the castle's lords and ladies have their own chambers with fires. You stretch gently, cradling a small bundle in one hand, a fresh load of laundry for your mistress. Each fold feels heavy, as if carrying secrets, each stitch telling tales of water and soap. You can almost smell the faint scent of lye that clings to these clothes, a persistent stench that never truly leaves you no matter how many times you wash. The room is dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through narrow windows, casting long shadows across the floor. You shiver slightly as your breath condenses into tiny puffs in front of your nose. The silence is almost deafening, only the distant hoots of an owl breaking its quiet grip on this world. You rise carefully from bed and feel for a candlestick by the wall, retrieving it with trembling fingers. As you strike the flint to light the candle, the flame flickers weakly, but provides enough illumination for you to see your reflection in the cracked mirror hanging over the dresser. Your eyes are still puffy from sleep, dark circles under them, as if they were trying to escape into the world. The weight of the laundry bundle increases with each step you take towards the small hearth by the window. You set it down gently on a wooden stand near where the fire had been last night, though now only ashes remain. The cold metal feels like ice against your palms as you pick up two iron tongs to stoke the coals back into life. As the flames grow stronger, they dance and crackle with eager energy, casting flickering shadows that play across the walls. You notice a small pile of clean clothes in one corner, yesterday's work already done by someone else. The contrast is stark between your task and theirs. You clear away these ready-made garments before setting about folding and laying out fresh linen for washing. Your fingers move mechanically as you sort through the laundry, feeling each garment to ensure it meets the standards set by your mistress. Cotton linens are smooth against your touch, whereas woolen undergarments have a coarser texture that requires more care when handling. Each piece tells its own story, from how much they've been worn down over time to what kind of work might be expected of their owner. The smell of the soap grows stronger as you pour it into a wooden bowl and mix in water from an earthen jug at your side. The lye has a pungent odor that makes you cough slightly, but the scent is oddly comforting, familiar even after so many years. You dip each piece of clothing into the mixture carefully, ensuring every stain meets its fate before rinsing them clean. As the laundry list grows shorter with each wash, your mind begins to wander. What if this were not just a task repeated day in and day out, but something extraordinary? What if these simple acts held more meaning than you could ever comprehend? The fire crackles softly as it settles into its nightly routine, casting light on the small tapestry hanging above where you stand, portraits of past stewards with their names written beneath them. Each one a silent guardian watching over your work, each face staring back at you from centuries ago. You pause for a moment, letting the weight of history wash over you before returning to your task. The bundle of freshly laundered clothes is now substantial in your arms, light yet somehow heavy with significance. As you step towards the hearth again, ready to dry them on the rack nearby, another sound catches your attention, a faint creaking from outside. You freeze momentarily, heart racing as the noise grows louder and more distinct. It's a soft thumping, rhythmic and deliberate, like someone pacing just beyond the door. For a moment you consider calling out, but something, perhaps fear or caution, keeps you silent. You continue drying your laundry, each piece of clothing laid neatly to air. By now, even in this dim light, you can make out the outline of a shadow on the far wall, a shape that seems almost human despite its size and movement. The thumping continues, growing more insistent with every second. It's as if someone is trying to gain entrance without making too much noise, careful not to disturb your work. You stand still, holding one last garment close while the rest hang on the rack. Each beat of that distant footfall feels like a warning, something urgent just beyond your door. You consider opening it to see who dares intrude so late at night, but decide against it. Better to keep watch and wait for them to reveal themselves. The firelight dances across the room, painting everything in flickering patterns that seem almost alive. As you stand there holding this bundle of clean linen, each piece telling its own tale, you feel a mix of exhaustion and determination settling over your shoulders like a heavy cloak. The weight of these clothes is not just physical, but symbolic, each one bearing witness to the ongoing struggle between duty and desire. As dawn begins to break outside, casting pale light through the windows, the thumping finally stops. You exhale slowly, releasing some of the tension that had gripped you since waking up. For in this place where past and present met, you are both witness and guardian, a silent echo in an ever-continuing story that would span countless more nights to come. The morning sunlight leaked through the cracks in your window, casting long shadows across the room where you lay. You stretched out, feeling every muscle sore from the night before and wondering how much longer this would last. The thumping had finally ceased, but it seemed that the castle's restless past continued to seep into your present. You got up slowly, gathering the heavy woolen cloak that was hung over a chair by the window seat. It felt like laid against your shoulders as you pulled it on. Its weight and thickness were comforting in a way, like armor for your soul. You made your way down the narrow corridor to where the servants' quarters lay hidden behind an unassuming door. The hallway was dim, lit only by candlelight from a nearby sconce. The silence here seemed more oppressive than that of the great halls above. It echoed with memories and whispers you had come to recognize over time. You passed through the chamber where your duties were laid out each night before retiring, parchments detailing laundry rites, rules for candle lighting, and instructions on how to tend to the fires without waking anyone else. As you moved into the kitchen, the aroma of brewing tea greeted you, a welcome distraction from the thoughts that lingered. You poured yourself a cup, letting its warmth seep through your fingers as you sipped quietly. It was during these moments when the lines between past and present blurred. In this room, the castle's history whispered to you through every piece of furniture. The laundry rites were a peculiar blend of ritual and routine that had been passed down for generations. You knew them all by heart now, though they hadn't necessarily taught you everything. The first thing nobody ever told you about these rites was their true purpose. Beyond the mundane task of cleaning, there lay layers of symbolism and protection woven into every step. You began with the water. It had to be drawn from a specific well outside the castle walls, where the spring sang songs of old battles and forgotten loves. The water needed to be blessed by one who held the title of Keeper of Secrets, a role that rotated among the servants each year, often chosen through an arcane game involving tokens and riddles. You had been selected last autumn, a sign perhaps, or just another twist in this ever-continuing story. The second thing nobody taught you was about the tools used for washing. The implements themselves held their own history. The wooden tubs, carved from ancient oaks, once belonged to the castle's founders, each piece telling tales of sieges and triumphs. Your hands traced over them as if they were old friends, their surfaces smooth despite years of wear. The third thing was perhaps the most profound. You learned that these rites weren't just for laundry. They were a form of protection against malevolent spirits that dwelled in the castle's shadows. Every fold and rinse had to be performed with intent, each action a barrier between you and unseen dangers lurking beyond your realm. It was said that if done correctly, these rituals could shield not only the keepers, but also those within its walls from harm. You moved through each step deliberately, knowing that every act of washing was more than just cleaning linens. It was part of an intricate web connecting past and present. As you worked, thoughts of what lay ahead began to take shape. Another night on duty, perhaps, or a meeting with the castle's steward who had yet to approve your progress in laundry rites. But for now, you let yourself be lost in the rhythm of it all, of water pouring into tubs, soap sudsing up under your careful hands. You were both witness and guardian here, silent echoes in this ever-continuing story that would span countless more nights to come. Each ritual a tiny thread binding together the lives of those who had lived within these walls before you, and perhaps even those yet to come. As dawn fully broke, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, you stepped outside into the courtyard. The air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of new beginnings. You closed your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the sun on your face serve as both a reminder and a comfort of the journey ahead and the strength within you to see it through. You took one last deep breath before turning back towards the castle's looming silhouette against the sky. The day was young, full of endless possibilities, and amidst them all stood the silent promise of another night spent serving inside this medieval fortress. The weight of a heavy wooden bucket presses against your shoulder, its wood rough and familiar under the thin fabric of your nightshirt. You carry it through the castle's winding corridors, each step echoing softly on stone floors that seem to hum with age. The air is cool and thick here, filled not just with the scent of damp stone, but a faint hint of something else, something you can almost taste in the back of your throat. The door at the end of the corridor creaks as it opens before you, revealing a narrow space dimly lit by an oil lamp hanging from the ceiling. You push open the flimsy curtain that hangs over the entrance and step into what is known among the servants as the most private chamber. The room's interior is surprisingly private, bare of any grand furniture or decorative tapestries found in other parts of the castle. Only a single table stands against one wall, littered with an assortment of papers, quills, and inkwells. A small fire crackles in the stone hearth opposite the door, casting flickering shadows that dance across the worn wooden floor. You set down your bucket gently on the table near the door and take off your gloves, feeling their weight lift from your hands like a burden lifted. The smell of old parchment and burnt wood stirs within you, mingling with the faint scent of something indescribable. Perhaps it's the earthy tinge of soil or just the lingering aroma of last night's dinner that lingers in this corner. You draw closer to the fire, feeling its warmth seep into your bones as you sit down on a low stool. The room is quiet, save for the occasional crackle from the flames and the distant sounds of muffled voices coming from deeper within the castle. It's a strange place, almost otherworldly in how it contrasts with the bustling chaos outside these thick stone walls. Here, among all this silence and stillness, you are not just a servant, but a guardian, watching over documents that tell tales beyond your comprehension. A single candle flickers to life on the table next to where you sit, casting its light over the papers scattered about. The ink is dark and smudged in places, as if written by hurried hands under pressure. You run a finger along one of the quills lying nearby, feeling its smooth metal surface beneath your touch. It's strange how something so simple can feel like such an important tool, like wielding power through this small implement. You reach out to pick up a paper from the pile, finding it slightly damp and crumpled in places where moisture had seeped through. The parchment is old, its fibers softening with time but still holding together under your gentle touch. You hold it at arm's length, studying the inked words that spill across it, names, dates, descriptions of events long past and distant. Each word feels like a piece of history, tangible in this moment. You shift slightly on your stool, feeling its wooden legs creak beneath you as you lean closer to examine one document more closely. It's a list, a record of some kind, detailing the allocation of resources for the upcoming year, or perhaps something else entirely. You can't quite make out what it is from here, but find yourself drawn deeper into this mysterious world laid bare before your eyes. The room grows colder as you sit there, the fire beginning to die down in its corner. The shadows stretch longer and more menacing under the light of the remaining candle, making each line on the paper seem darker against the fading glow. You pull your nightshirt closer around yourself, feeling a shiver run through your body, not just from the temperature, but also from an unspoken sense of foreboding that seems to linger in this quiet space. You lean back slightly, allowing your eyes to drift over the papers again, each one telling its own story, each line marking some moment in time. It's almost as if you are holding a piece of history in your hands, the very essence of what happened here centuries ago, preserved through ink and paper. You can almost hear the voices from long past speaking softly back at you through these words. As you sit there surrounded by the stillness, you realize that this quiet chamber holds secrets, secrets about people who lived before you, about decisions made in rooms like this one. It's a reminder of how much has changed, and yet so little, of how certain struggles and concerns remain constant across generations. You feel both connected to these distant souls and separated from them at the same time, the weight of their stories pressing down on your chest as if they were physical objects. You close the paper gently, setting it aside with a soft clink that echoes through the room. The silence returns almost immediately, broken only by the occasional sound of crackling wood in the hearth and distant voices from outside the castle walls. You take another deep breath, feeling its chill seep into your lungs as you prepare to leave this private space behind. As you stand up, stretching your arms above your head with a sigh that carries the weight of the day's work, you feel the door creak open again, another servant entering on their own quiet mission. You step aside without speaking, allowing them passage and returning to your thoughts as they pass by in the fading light. The room seems larger now, more spacious, after having been filled with these documents and memories for a moment longer. The air is heavy with the scent of old ink and decaying wood, pressing down on you like an invisible weight. As you turn to leave, the door closes behind you with a soft click that echoes faintly in your mind, even as it disappears into the silence beyond. The corridor ahead stretches out before you once more, each step echoing softly underfoot as you make your way back towards the bustling life outside these quiet walls. But for now, this moment inside the most private chamber remains, a snapshot of history frozen just long enough to be seen clearly in its details. As you step out from beneath the heavy wooden door, the cool night air envelops your body like an old friend. The stone walls and darkened corridors seem to whisper secrets as they part ways with you, offering only shadows for company in their silent goodbye. You walk past tapestries that tell tales of knights and ladies, their stories now lost to time, but still visible through the faint outlines woven into the fabric. The courtyard ahead is a scene of activity. Torches flicker amidst the gathered servants, their voices blending together like a chorus of murmurs. The air hums with life, yet you feel detached from it all, like an observer rather than one partaking in the daily dance of castle living. Your steps become more deliberate as you navigate through this sea of activity toward the main hall. Inside, the grandeur of the great hall greets your eyes. Its ceiling is a marvel of woodwork and plaster, adorned with murals that depict scenes from ancient battles and noble victories. The walls are lined with long tables where feasts were once laid out for lords and ladies alike. Today, these spaces echo softly with the sounds of service, plates clinking together as dishes are passed around. A servant approaches you, her eyes meeting yours in a glance that speaks volumes without words. She nods slightly toward an ornate door at the far end of the hall, marked by intricate carvings and inscriptions too old for most to decipher fully. "That is where they say it happened," she whispers, barely audible over the din. You nod back, feeling a sense of duty stir within you as your curiosity grows. The servant leads you through winding passages and up narrow staircases until finally you find yourself standing before an unassuming door that seems out of place among its more grandiose neighbors. It is heavily carved with symbols that hint at some dark or sacred past, yet it remains plain enough to be overlooked by all but the most observant. Knocking gently 3 times as per protocol, you wait a moment before opening the door and stepping inside. The air here feels heavier than elsewhere, thick with history and mystery. A small room awaits, its walls lined with shelves filled with countless books, scrolls, and artifacts that tell stories of ages past. At the center stands an intricately carved wooden desk, upon which rests a single lamp still flickering weakly. Your gaze falls upon it first, a heavy leather-bound journal lying open to reveal pages filled with text, so faded they seem almost ethereal in their ghost-like quality. Each line tells tales of those who once walked these halls, their hopes and fears recorded for all time within this humble book. Turning the page carefully reveals more entries, each one adding another layer to the castle's complex history. As you leaf through its pages, memories begin to blur together, of knights in shining armor, ladies with delicate hands, and the ever-present shadows that seem to watch from every corner of the room. Each entry brings a new revelation, hidden chambers beneath the kitchens, secret passages leading to forgotten gardens, and even whispers of forbidden knowledge kept safely here away from prying eyes. It is during this exploration that you come across an old parchment tucked behind one of the books, a map, perhaps, or some sort of diagram detailing the layout of what must have been considered the most private space within these walls. Its ink has faded with age, but still manages to convey enough detail for you to make out faint lines and symbols marking locations, both mundane and magical. The implications are staggering. Here lies evidence not just of daily life in a medieval castle, but also hints at deeper mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As your fingers trace over these ancient marks, they seem almost alive, pulsing with the energy of generations who once held this knowledge close. The weight of what you hold feels immense. Here are stories that could change perceptions and rewrite history. With renewed determination, you decide it is time to share these findings, not just for their own sake, but also because there may be others who can help uncover truths long buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten lore. Gathering your thoughts, you step back into the bustling hall where life continues as if nothing has changed, yet inside this castle's most private chamber, a new chapter is about to unfold, one that promises both revelation and responsibility. Outside, the night stretches on endlessly under a blanket of stars, punctuated only by occasional torchlight from below. The world beyond these walls seems vast and full of secrets waiting to be discovered, much like what lies within this humble room, now brimming with untold stories ready for their time in the light once more. The cool stone of the floor pressed against your bare feet, a stark contrast to the warmth that seemed to emanate from every corner of this medieval castle's inner chambers. The air was thick with the smell of garlic and ash, garlic so potent it clung stubbornly to the back of your throat, making you feel like you were eating through layers of fabric. Ash, too, the remnants of countless hearths that had burned throughout the day, now cooling into a fine powder that dusted every surface. You sat by the wall, wrapping yourself in a heavy cloak, as the chill began to seep through the thick stone walls. The silence was profound here, broken only occasionally by the distant creaking of wooden beams settling from years of weight and neglect. You could feel your own breathing filling this space, each inhale and exhale resonating within the vast, echoing room. The smell grew stronger as you turned towards a small window that had been hastily boarded up long ago, letting in just enough light to see by, but not enough to offer much comfort from the encroaching darkness. The garlic stench was almost overwhelming, mingling with the scent of old parchment and rotted wood. It seemed to have an oddly soothing effect, a constant presence that you had come to accept as part of your surroundings. You picked up a small quill pen lying on the table before you, its wooden shaft cold against the skin of your fingers. The ink was nearly dry, black and viscous, as if it too was waiting for just one more brush stroke or two. You dipped the tip into an inkwell that had been refilled with carelessness, the ink splattering slightly as the quill began to write again. The weight of the pen in your hand felt familiar yet alien. It reminded you of all the scribes before you who had used this very tool to record their stories and histories, each one contributing a tiny piece to the larger tapestry that was this castle's past. You could almost see them sitting here, just as you were now, men and women with calloused hands and determined eyes, driven by an insatiable curiosity about what lay beyond these walls. As your hand moved across the page, you began to write, letting the words flow out of you in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each letter was carefully formed, each word precisely placed, as if every mark mattered, just like it did for those who had come before and would continue after you. The act of writing itself felt almost meditative, an anchor that kept your thoughts from wandering too far into the unknown. You wrote about the daily lives of people in this castle, their struggles with meager food rations, their battles against lice and vermin, their rituals around meals shared at small tables scattered throughout. Each detail was painted vividly on the page, so real that you could almost taste the garlic bread or smell the smoke from another cook's kitchen. It was a strange comfort to know that even in this forgotten place, humanity persisted, clinging to routines and traditions as if they were lifelines. The sound of your own breathing mingled with the creaking floorboards above, creating an eerie harmony that seemed almost supernatural in its quietude. You could imagine yourself sitting here for hours on end, hands moving over paper like a painter's brush, capturing moments that would otherwise be lost to time. Suddenly, you felt a small shiver run down your spine as the temperature began to drop slightly. The air grew colder, each breath visible in the dim light of the candle flickering nearby. You adjusted your cloak tighter around yourself, pulling it closer and feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over you. This was why you had chosen this room. Its proximity to the hearth below offered some small respite from the chill that seemed to creep into every nook and cranny. You leaned back against the wall, letting your eyes slide shut for just a moment. The warmth of the stones seeped through your clothing, offering a brief reprieve from the cold that had become almost unbearable. As you lay there, cocooned in layers of fabric and memories, you felt yourself drifting ever so slightly towards sleep. But before you completely succumbed to rest, you reached out for one more piece of paper. You unfolded it carefully, laying it flat on your lap, as if it held the weight of a world upon its surface. The ink was still wet, the words barely visible in their fluidity. With a final breath, you dipped the quill once again into the remaining ink and began to write. In that moment, everything seemed right. Every detail, every scent, every sound blending seamlessly together as if time itself had slowed just for this brief respite from the relentless passage of history. You were no longer just writing. You were living through these words, breathing life back into stories long forgotten by most, but cherished in your heart. As the sun dipped lower and darkness finally claimed the castle, you knew that soon it would be time to retire to a bed far too hard for comfort. But for now, there was this room, warmth on one side, cold on another, and an endless sea of stories waiting to be told. And so you continued to write, letting each word fall onto the page like drops in a still pond, reflecting back upon itself with gentle clarity. The world beyond these walls seemed vast and full of secrets waiting to be discovered, much like what lay within this humble room now brimming with untold stories ready for their time in the light once more. From within the castle walls, a peculiar aroma began to permeate through the corridors. It was not an odor one could easily dismiss or ignore. It carried with it a distinct and almost comforting familiarity, like the smell of garlic cooking in oil on a hot summer's day. Yet there was something more, a hint of ash that mingled subtly beneath, as if memories of ancient fires lingered within the stone walls. Elena, one of the castle servants, paused mid-step as she caught this scent on the breeze. She leaned against the cold stone archway, her eyes tracing the history etched into every inch of the castle's structure. The smell brought back a flood of memories from her childhood, when she and her family would gather around their hearth, garlic sizzling in oil to ward off the chill of winter nights. She closed her eyes momentarily, allowing the scents to wash over her like waves on a beach. As the scent of garlic and ash combined with the earthy musk of damp stone, a vivid scene unfolded before her inner eye, her father's robust figure standing tall by their hearth, hands wrapped around a steaming bowl, his voice warm as he recited old tales to the family gathered in the warmth. The castle had not been immune to its own share of fires over the years. Walls that now stood proud and strong had once blazed with fierce intensity, consuming everything within reach until only ash remained. Yet these ashes held a strange allure. They spoke of resilience and rebirth, just as the garlic did, in its pungent yet soothing embrace. Elena's thoughts drifted back to her duties inside this castle now. Her hands had grown accustomed to the routine that kept the household running smoothly. She was responsible for many tasks, preparing meals, cleaning hearths, tending to the gardens where fresh herbs like garlic flourished in abundance. Each morning began with a careful selection of the day's ingredients, their vibrant colors and aromas setting the stage for what lay ahead. Today was no different. She set about gathering her tools, a small basket containing everything from sharp scissors for clipping herbs to sturdy brushes for dusting surfaces. As she made her way through the castle, the scent grew stronger with each step until it enveloped her completely. She could feel the warmth of the hearth even in the chill of early morning air. In one of the larger kitchens, Elena paused before a particularly large and imposing fire pit. The ashes here were still warm from last night's feast, their embers glowing faintly under the winter sun now peeking through the castle windows. She knelt down to gather some fresh wood for the day's fires. Garlic was being prepared for lunch, its pungent essence soon to be released into the air. As she worked, Elena reflected on how integral these scents had become over time. They were more than just olfactory impressions. They were part of the fabric that wove together her days within this castle's walls. The smell of garlic and ash spoke not only of sustenance, but also of stories yet untold, tales passed down through generations, whispers carried on the breeze from long ago. She straightened up with a small smile, tucking away thoughts, as she began to chop the fragrant cloves into fine slices for seasoning soups and stews. The air now filled not just with the scent, but also the promise of hearty meals that would nourish both body and spirit throughout the day. Outside, the world beyond continued its silent vigil, fields blanketed in frost, distant mountains bathed in morning light. But here within these stone walls, life pulsed through every cell, the warmth of hearths, the earthy richness of garlic, the enduring presence of ash that reminded all who lived there of both destruction and renewal. With each breath she took, Elena felt herself becoming more deeply enmeshed with this place, its history, its stories, even its scents. For in the intricate tapestry of daily life within a medieval castle, it was these subtle olfactory notes that intertwined most intimately with the souls who called it home. A faint whisper of musty parchment and aged leather tickles your nose, mingling with a chill that seeps into your bones like ice water. The air hangs heavy in the great hall, thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, stale bread, and the acrid tang of wet wool from the guards patrolling their rounds. Your cloak feels strangely heavy against you. It has been days since you last saw sunlight, and the weight seems to settle deeper into your shoulders each moment. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, its flames dancing like restless spirits, casting long shadows that flicker across faces buried in paperwork or lost in slumber. The room is dimmer now, a hush settling over it as night claims one more piece of time from the day. You run your fingers through your hair, tousled and damp with sweat, trying to dislodge a few stray wisps that stubbornly cling. Your task today was to sort through a pile of correspondence, but now you can barely see the words on the page. Your eyes feel as if they have been rubbed raw. The quill in your hand feels cold against your fingers. It has already grown quite heavy after so much writing. You place it down carefully and stretch, wincing at the stiffness that refuses to loosen. Your back aches from sitting still for too long, but you know better than to complain. There are far worse fates than this tedious task. The sound of breathing around you is almost overwhelming. Everyone in here seems to have forgotten how to breathe quietly. You can hear the distant clink of metal as guards finish their last rounds and shuffle out, leaving only the soft rustling of fabric as your fellow servants adjust themselves on the benches nearby. The silence that follows feels almost oppressive. You pull a thin blanket from one of the chairs beside you and wrap it tightly around yourself, trying to find some warmth in its coarse texture. It does little to stave off the chill, but at least it gives you something tangible to hold onto. Your fingers brush against another letter, a thick parchment scroll wrapped in wax with an elaborate seal that glints faintly under the firelight. You think about unsealing it, wondering if perhaps this might be a distraction from your current misery. The letter is addressed to someone else, but sometimes there's no harm in reading things aloud for entertainment's sake. With a sigh, you break the wax and unfold the scroll, its edges curling slightly as it comes loose. The words on the page are written in elegant script, filled with formalities that mean little here in this castle. You read them slowly, savoring each sentence until your vision begins to blur. The letter speaks of distant lands and long-lost relatives, but you find yourself thinking more about the ink staining your fingers as you trace over it. You glance up just as a shadow passes overhead, likely one of the high lords or ladies taking their evening stroll through this great hall. Their presence is a reminder that even in such a place, where common servants like yourselves are largely forgotten, there is still hierarchy and order to maintain. You lower your head quickly, hoping not to attract any unwanted attention. Your mind drifts back to earlier, when you first arrived here after the first winter. The cold had been biting then too, cutting through layers of clothing as if it were nothing but a thin veil. Now that first winter seems like another lifetime away, so different from this perpetual twilight that now fills your days and nights alike. You remember how everyone was so anxious back then, fearing what might come next in these dark times. The castle had been filled with whispers and rumors, people whispering about the harshness of winters to come or the uncertainty hanging over their futures like a heavy shroud. Those first weeks were almost unbearable as you tried to settle into your new routine amidst so much turmoil. But now everything feels settled into its place again. The same menials trudge through the halls, performing the same tasks day in and day out. You wonder if any of them remember what it was like back then, the fear, the uncertainty, that first winter when you truly did not know how long this would all last. You shift slightly on your chair, trying to find a more comfortable position. The floor feels hard beneath you despite the cushions provided for comfort. There are few things in life here that aren't meant strictly as tools or symbols of status rather than mere necessities. You wish briefly for softer ground to rest upon, perhaps even a bed where you could lay your head without waking up every hour to check if it's time to get back on your feet again. The fire creaks softly, its embers shifting and settling into new patterns as they burn low. Shadows dance across the walls in complex shapes that seem almost alive under their own power. You can feel them creeping closer, reaching out towards you with long fingers of darkness. But then there's a soft knock at the door, a gentle reminder to be present again. You push yourself up from your chair and make your way over to open it without too much effort. A guard stands outside, his face obscured by shadows cast by the hall's torches. He nods politely but says nothing. It would do no good for him to speak now when the silence is so palpable. You step aside to let him pass, feeling a brief tug of gratitude before he disappears back into whatever duty awaits him. The door closes behind you with a soft click that echoes through the hall's vast emptiness. The weight of solitude returns almost immediately. It presses down upon your chest like an old friend who knows exactly how much company is needed. You settle once more into the chair, trying to ignore the dull ache in your back and the growing numbness spreading across your fingers. You pull out another letter, a simple one this time, written by a fellow servant from home. The familiar scrawl brings a small smile to your face as you read it aloud for perhaps the 100th time. It's easy enough to forget why you're here sometimes, why all of this matters so much. But these letters remind you. They keep a connection alive between places and people who may never see each other again. You close the letter carefully, tucking it away in your pocket before reaching for another task left undone at your workstation. There's always something to be done here, no matter how little time remains until dawn breaks once more over this ancient stone fortress. The fire crackles louder now, its flames licking hungrily towards what remains of their fuel. Shadows grow longer and darker as night deepens around you, casting long, twisting shapes across the floor that seem almost like fingers reaching out to grasp at your very soul. But you sit still, content in the quiet familiarity of this place, this castle filled with secrets whispered through walls and shared amongst those who dare venture too close. And so it is here, amidst these whispers and shadows, that you find yourself lost once more within a labyrinthine world where each moment feels like an eternity, and every task brings only another small step closer to the dawn of something new. Amidst the ever-present murmur that seemed almost human in its persistence, you found yourself once again wandering through the castle's winding halls and hidden chambers. The cold air bit sharply at your face as the shadows lengthened, casting long, eerie shapes upon the walls. Each step echoed softly beneath your feet, mingling with the distant sounds of whispered voices and clinking metal, perhaps from a guard's sword sharpening or a mage working late into the night. The name nobody would say out loud after the first winter was whispered, as if it were a curse. It was said in hushed tones, never fully completed, yet always hanging heavy between every breath. Whispers carried through the walls and corridors like smoke from an unlit fire, a memory that clung to the very air. It began with a chill, a sudden draft at your back, which turned out to be nothing more than the wind catching poorly sealed windows. But it left behind a lingering sense of unease. You found yourself pausing in doorways and hallways, eyes darting around as if expecting something unseen to emerge from the shadows. The castle was vast, with countless nooks and crannies, each one potentially holding its own secrets. The first winter had been brutal. Snow fell without cease, turning the courtyard into a frozen fortress of ice and frost. Inside, the castle felt even colder, the stone walls seeming to absorb every bit of warmth from your body. You huddled in front of fireplaces that seemed perpetually starved for fuel. Wood was hard to come by when everything outside was encased in ice. And yet, amidst this stark landscape, there were moments of unexpected beauty. Frost patterns formed intricate designs on windows and walls, each one unique, as if nature itself had taken a hand at crafting the castle's very essence. Snowflakes sparkled like tiny stars when they landed upon your cloak or drifted past torchlight. But it was during these quiet times that you heard it, the name nobody would say out loud after the first winter. It was spoken in different voices, sometimes by those who had been here for years and others who were new arrivals. The words always trailed off into silence before anyone could finish them, leaving a taste of dread lingering on your tongue. You began to notice more than just whispers. Sometimes, when you passed through certain rooms or hallways, there was an odd feeling that something had changed, though nothing seemed visibly different. Shadows moved too quickly for the eye to follow, and doors creaked shut without any apparent cause. One evening, as twilight settled over the castle like a thick blanket of darkness, you found yourself drawn towards a particular door at the end of one particularly long corridor. It was an unassuming door, no more than a small wooden portal set into the stone. Yet something about it drew you closer, almost against your will. As you approached, the whispers grew louder until they were nearly overwhelming. You hesitated for what felt like an eternity before finally mustering up enough courage to push open the door and step inside. The room beyond was dimly lit by a single candle that flickered on one of the walls, casting long shadows across its stone floor. At first glance, it appeared empty, a simple chamber with no apparent purpose or furniture, except for one thing. Etched into the wall near where you stood was an ancient symbol, barely visible due to centuries of wear. It looked familiar somehow, though your mind could not place why until a voice spoke softly behind you. "Are you still here?" it asked, its tone both wistful and resigned. You spun around to see a figure emerging from the shadows, someone who seemed almost ethereal in their ghostly appearance, yet unmistakably human at the same time. Their eyes held an otherworldly light that made them seem both ancient and wise. "You shouldn't be here," they said softly, as if speaking directly into your thoughts rather than aloud. "The name. It should remain unspoken." "Why?" you asked, your voice barely more than a whisper. "Because its power lies in the very act of utterance," came the reply. "Once spoken, words gain weight and meaning, far beyond their mere sound." As they spoke, the symbol on the wall began to glow faintly, drawing attention from every corner of the room. The light seemed to ripple outwards, casting patterns across the stone floor that looked almost alive. "Why did you bring me here?" you asked, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and fear. "It was time," came the response, "for someone who could understand. For those rare few whose hearts are pure enough." The figure stepped closer, their presence now more tangible, as if they were part of this very place, rather than just a visitor within its walls. Their eyes met yours with an intensity that made your breath catch. "No," they continued, their voice steady and calm, "that the name nobody would say out loud is not merely a label or title. It embodies something far more profound." As if by some unseen force, you found yourself leaning in closer, drawn into their words, as if they were the only thing keeping you anchored to reality. The room around you seemed to grow brighter still, illuminating secrets and truths that had been hidden for centuries. And then, just when everything felt on the brink of revelation, a sharp knock came from outside, breaking through the trance-like state in which you now found yourself. You pulled back sharply, as if waking from a deep sleep, and turned to find the figure standing there, its expression unreadable. "Time is running out," it said simply before turning towards the door once more. "Remember what we spoke of here." Before you could ask for clarification or demand answers, they were gone, leaving behind only an echo in your mind that lingered long after the door shut firmly closed behind them. You stood there for a moment longer, trying to process everything that had just transpired, before slowly turning and retracing your steps back through the labyrinthine castle. Each step felt heavier now, burdened with newfound knowledge and questions that threatened to overwhelm you. Yet despite the weight of what you had learned, something inside you shifted, like turning a key in an ancient lock, opening doors not just within this place, but also perhaps within yourself. As dawn approached, casting its pale light through the windows once more, you felt both wary and hopeful for the day ahead. The scent of rain-soaked earth clung to your nose, a thick and damp aroma that seemed almost tangible as you stirred from sleep. The weight of the heavy leather glove in your hand pressed into your palm, its rough texture providing subtle resistance against your skin. You had worn it for so many years, yet each morning held fresh reminders of the calluses that now marred both the glove and your hands. Outside, the castle echoed with muffled sounds, the distant clatter of raindrops on stone, a gusty wind sighing through the gaps in the window panes, and the occasional drip from the corner of a leaking roof. You turned over, pulling the woolen blanket closer to your chin, its warmth a familiar comfort against the chill that seeped into the rooms overnight. Dawn approached once more, casting its pale light through the windows. The world beyond seemed dimly outlined in shades of grey and indigo, as if seen through a veil. Shadows crept along the walls, dancing with your every movement. A fire crackled softly by the hearth, its warmth seeping into the cold stone room that was your domain. You rose from bed, stretching each limb to ease their stiffness after hours of restful slumber. Your muscles groaned in protest at being wrenched out of sleep. Groggily, you reached for the heavy wooden chair beside the hearth and pulled it closer. The rough grain of its surface grated against your fingertips as you seated yourself. The firelight played across the chair's backrest, casting flickering shadows that seemed to move almost independently. As dawn fully broke, the light intensified, bathing everything in a soft golden hue. Shadows retreated from their corners, revealing the wear and tear of centuries. A small spider crawled along one wall, its legs making tiny clacking sounds against the stone. You watched it for a moment before returning your attention to the fire. Embers smoldered softly, throwing off gentle warmth that you gratefully absorbed. Your mind began to wander as you sat there, memories and thoughts intertwining in a haze of half-dreams. The castle hummed around you, a place of both beauty and burdens. Every stone wall whispered stories, every tapestry held secrets, and the very air seemed charged with history. Yet for now, all was still. You reached out a hand to feel the flames. They burned with an intense heat that warmed your palm even as they flickered unpredictably in their dance of light and shadow. The embers clung stubbornly to life, refusing to fully extinguish despite the rain outside. You considered them for a moment before turning back towards the window. Outside, the landscape had changed overnight. Fields once green now glistened with water droplets. Trees stood tall but bare against the sky, their branches heavy with dampness. A flock of birds called softly in the distance, a melody that seemed almost melancholic amidst the still morning silence. You returned to your chair and began sorting through the pile of parchment documents scattered across its surface. Each sheet was brittle from age, some yellowed at the edges as if they had aged under the castle's own roof for decades. You ran a finger over their surfaces, feeling their rough texture against skin that knew well both calluses and softness. The papers were records, official notes, decrees, and accounts of past events. They chronicled every aspect of life within these walls, from trade with distant lands to the minutiae of daily routines. One document caught your eye, a list detailing the contents of the castle's treasury, each item meticulously recorded in small, neat handwriting. You traced over it gently, feeling the weight and importance of such records. As you continued to sift through papers, a sudden sound drew your attention from your reverie. It was faint but unmistakable, the soft thump of heavy footsteps on stone flooring outside. Your heart skipped a beat as realization dawned. Someone had entered this part of the castle without permission. You straightened in your seat and listened more intently. The sounds grew louder, closer. Someone approached you from behind, their footsteps echoing softly through the empty room. The air around you seemed to tense momentarily before relaxing again as you recognized the person approaching, a fellow servant named Elliot, who had been entrusted with various duties throughout the castle. Elliot paused just outside your line of sight, breathing heavily after his quick pace. His breath was warm and slightly pungent from exertion, or perhaps a meal eaten too soon. You could almost taste it on the air, mingling with the earthy smell of rain-soaked ground outside. Elliot cleared his throat softly before speaking. "Good morning," he said in a low tone that carried just enough to be heard over the quiet of the room. "I'm here for the records you were working on yesterday." You nodded without turning, keeping your eyes on the documents spread out before you. "Yes, bring them with you, and I'll gather what's needed." You didn't want to make a fuss, but understood the importance of these tasks. Elliot moved into view slightly, his presence adding another layer to the atmosphere, a weighty man with broad shoulders and a stern expression that softened only at moments like this. He placed several documents on your lap, each page crisp against your fingers as you sorted through them quickly yet methodically. As Elliot stood by, you felt both gratitude for his assistance and a twinge of unease regarding the ease with which he entered such private spaces. The castle was vast, and many servants shared similar duties, but this familiarity often blurred lines between propriety and intrusion. You wondered what would happen if someone were to abuse their access. The sound of dripping water continued outside, steady, rhythmic, and it seemed to punctuate the quiet in a way that made time feel both suspended and relentless all at once. Shadows lengthened as the sun crept higher above the horizon, casting longer fingers across the room's cold stone walls. You noticed a small stain on one document, a smudge of ink where moisture had pooled briefly before drying. The stain was barely noticeable, yet it reminded you of how easily such records could be altered or lost. History itself seemed fragile in this moment, each word written with care and each page protected by the weighty tomes that held them. As dawn fully broke, filling the room with its golden light, a sense of quiet resolve settled over you. You knew your role here, to keep track of details both large and small, to ensure that every record was preserved for future generations. Yet amidst these mundane tasks lay the possibility of great responsibility. What if the very integrity of this place rested on such diligent stewardship? Your thoughts drifted once more as you began marking pages with ink-soaked quill, each stroke precise yet deliberate. The weight in your hands, the leather glove, the heavy paper, the documents themselves, ground into consciousness like a reminder that history was built upon such small actions repeated over time. Outside, rain continued to fall in steady rhythms, its soft patter providing an almost comforting backdrop for this morning routine. You felt both wary and hopeful as dawn approached once more, casting its pale light through windows once more. The weight of your responsibilities pressed down momentarily before being lifted by the simple act of breathing deeply into the cool morning air. As you continued to work, a small warmth began to spread within, the satisfaction of knowing that even in this quiet corner of the castle, amidst ancient records and forgotten details, there was purpose and responsibility waiting. With each stroke of your quill, the pages filled with lines that spoke of battles won and lost, alliances forged and broken, and the quiet, often overlooked moments of daily life within these walls. The sun had barely climbed past the horizon when you realized it was time for the morning report to the Lord. You folded up the parchment carefully and slipped it into a small leather pouch at your belt before making your way through the winding corridors. The silence in the castle seemed amplified by the absence of voices, save for the occasional creaking of timbers and distant echoes of the wind passing through broken windows. As you turned down one of the many stairs leading up to the Lord's chambers, a sense of unease began to settle over you. The air felt heavier here, as if the very stone beneath your feet held secrets better left unspoken. Reaching the grand hall, you found it unusually quiet for this early hour. Servants scurried about their tasks with hushed whispers and hurried footsteps, but no one met your gaze directly. Your heart began to race a little as you made your way towards the Lord's private study, where he would soon be making his rounds. Upon entering the room, you found him seated at an ornate desk, surrounded by scrolls and books. His expression was calm, almost serene, but there was something about it that didn't quite match his usual demeanor. "Good morning," you said, your voice steady despite the flutter in your stomach. Morning records keeper. The Lord nodded without looking up from a document he held tightly clasped between fingers that seemed unnaturally still. He gestured for you to take a seat across from him, and as you did so, something caught your eye, a small blackened paper on his desk. Your mind raced with possibilities, some trivial matter perhaps, or maybe. No, it couldn't be. As if sensing the disturbance in the air around them, both of you paused mid-sentence. The Lord looked up then, meeting your gaze directly for the first time since entering the room. His eyes were a piercing blue, unyielding, and somehow more intense than usual. "Have you noticed anything unusual?" he asked quietly, his voice betraying none of the emotion that flickered across his face. You thought back to the past few nights, how quiet it had been, how strange the silence felt. The guards reported nothing out of the ordinary, you responded hesitantly, feeling a cold dread begin to settle in your chest. The Lord sighed softly and leaned forward, setting down his pen with deliberate care. "I have reason to believe that our night watchmen may be compromised," he said grimly. "We need to ensure no one else has been affected." Your mind was racing now, though you forced yourself to remain calm. "Do we know who might be involved?" you asked, trying to sound nonchalant as you reached for the small pouch at your belt. The Lord shook his head slowly. "Not yet." His expression shifted again, a flicker of something that could have been relief or perhaps resignation crossing his face before he schooled it back into its usual composed mask. "We need to act swiftly and with great caution." You nodded, knowing better than to argue. You reached for the pouch, feeling its contents jostle against your fingers as you pulled out a small vial of ink, a tool in the records keeper's arsenal that could be used both for writing and other purposes. "Let us begin," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "We must ensure our records are secure first." Together, under the dim light filtering through the heavy curtains, you began to work. The castle was quiet around them, save for a few scattered voices from the kitchens or servants' quarters as they prepared for their day's tasks. But in that stillness, there seemed to be an underlying tension, an awareness of something amiss. Hours passed by unfeelingly, your fingers dancing over parchments and ink-stained pages, while the Lord scrutinized each document with a critical eye. The air grew heavier with each passing moment, as if even the stone walls themselves held their breath in anticipation. It wasn't until you were nearly finished that the first sign of trouble appeared, a small gap between two stones near your feet. Without thinking, you reached down to investigate and found something hard pressed into the crevice, another small vial, identical to yours, but empty save for a single drop of liquid at its bottom. As if struck by lightning, comprehension dawned on both of you simultaneously. Someone had been trying to sabotage your work all along. With trembling hands, you passed the evidence over to the Lord, who examined it carefully before nodding grimly. "This is our proof," he murmured softly. "We must act now." You nodded in agreement, though doubt gnawed at the edges of your resolve. The castle was vast and complex. How many had been silenced? And why? Together, you made your way through the corridors once more, this time with a purpose that cut like cold steel against the uncertainty lingering in each shadowy corner. Servants and guards alike cast wary glances as they passed, their eyes wide with fear or perhaps hope. Hope for what? only the gods knew. In the end, it was the simple act of breathing deeply into the cool morning air that anchored you once more to reality, a reminder that amidst all this chaos and darkness, there still existed small threads of light worth clinging to. The first light of dawn filtered through the thin curtain hanging from your window, casting long shadows across the rough stone wall. The air was cool and crisp, carrying with it a faint hint of dew and something else, pine needles and earthy moss that clung to your nostrils like whispers in the night wind. You exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the heavy blanket you held in your arms as if cradling an old friend. It had been so long since you last breathed this air, free from the confines of your room. You stretched a little, letting out another deep breath that seemed to clear away the remnants of sleep, leaving behind only a slight ache between your shoulder blades where the blanket pressed just right. The warmth of it was comforting against your skin, like an old friend's embrace before dawn broke and reality clawed its way into consciousness. Outside, the world lay still in quietude, save for the occasional chirp of a bird or the distant creaking of wood, as some unseen force worked away at the castle's bones. You could hear the faintest whisper of wind stirring through the trees, their branches swaying gently like ghosts reaching out from the shadows. The scent of wet earth and decaying leaves mixed with the tangy bite of morning dew, creating a scent that was both familiar and alien, a reminder of times long past. Your fingers tightened on the blanket as you recalled the day before, when everything had changed in an instant. It wasn't a grand event or even a significant decision. It was simply one morning, like many others, yet somehow different. You could still feel the weight of that heavy wooden door creaking under your fingertips, the slow grind of its hinges as you pushed inward to find the world waiting on the other side. The castle had been bustling with activity since dawn broke, servants scurrying from room to room, their voices a soft hum against the stone walls. Yet today felt different, more intense somehow, like every breath held in readiness for something new and unforeseen. You could hear footsteps echoing down the corridor outside your door, heavy boots clicking softly on flagstone floors that had seen countless generations of feet before yours. The blanket you clutched was your only link to the warmth of last night's bed, a tangible reminder of what little comfort you now possessed in this grand and unwelcoming stone fortress. You could almost feel the softness of its fabric against your skin, though it seemed like a distant memory amidst the cold grip of reality. Outside, the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting golden rays through the narrow slits of windows that pierced the thick walls. The light danced across the floor in shifting patterns, each ray bringing with it a promise of new beginnings and old sorrows. You could see your own shadow stretched out before you, long and thin, like an invitation to step into the unknown. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on your shoulders as reality began to seep back in. The simple act of breathing deeply into that cool morning air anchored you once more to this moment, a reminder that amidst all this chaos and darkness, there still existed small threads of light worth clinging to. It was a fragile hope, but one that would be the foundation upon which your day's struggles would begin. The castle had always been a place of contrasts, cold stone walls echoing with silent whispers, while outside lay fields where sunflowers swayed gently in the breeze. You could almost feel the difference between the two worlds, each holding its own secrets and stories. Inside these walls was a labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and hidden passages that spoke volumes but revealed little. As you stood there for what felt like an eternity, your mind wandered back to simpler times, when tasks were few and the world seemed less daunting. You remembered mornings spent in warmer climates, under skies where blue stretched endlessly without end. Those days had been filled with laughter and light, a far cry from this place of shadows and secrets. The blanket you held was more than just fabric. It was a connection to comfort, a reminder that even in the most trying moments, there existed small pockets of warmth within the vast expanse of cold stone. You could almost see its fibers glowing softly under your touch, each one representing a memory or moment that had been cherished. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath for just an instant before springing into life once more. The dew-covered grass sparkled like tiny diamonds in the first light of day, their sparkle hinting at hidden treasures yet unclaimed. You could almost feel the softness of a flower petal underfoot as you imagined walking through such beauty, a stark contrast to your current reality. The castle had always been a place of order and chaos, where every room held its own story waiting to be told, but rarely shared openly. Each corridor whispered secrets in the silence between footsteps, each chamber harboring hidden treasures or ancient curses, depending on one's perspective. Yet here you stood, at the threshold of something new, a chance to redefine not just your role within these walls, but perhaps even the very essence of what this place represented. As dawn fully broke and light filled every corner, you felt a shift in your resolve, an acceptance that sometimes change came not from grand gestures or sweeping declarations, but from everyday moments like these, moments when reality paused long enough for one to truly breathe. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting a golden hue over the stone walls and wooden beams that lined your chambers. You sat up slowly, stretching as you did so, each muscle sore from the night's restlessness. The silence was palpable. It seemed to echo against the heavy stone of the castle walls, each breath drawing in the crisp morning air with an almost tangible weight. Your thoughts drifted back to the night before, a myriad of emotions swirling within you like autumn leaves caught in a gusty wind. You had made your decision, perhaps not as grand or sweeping as some might consider necessary for change, but nonetheless significant. The choice felt both liberating and terrifying at once. It was an acknowledgement that sometimes progress is forged one small step at a time. You rose from the bed, the cold stone floor beneath you offering no comfort. Today would be different. Today would begin with a new perspective, a shift in your routine that could ripple out into other areas of life within this castle walls. The task before you seemed daunting, but was strangely simple, to make one change today and see how it affected everything else. Stepping outside your chambers, the fresh morning air greeted you like an old friend. You walked through the courtyard, past familiar faces of the servants who bustled about their duties. Each nod or greeting felt more meaningful now that a weight seemed lifted from your shoulders. The castle's grandeur was less imposing today. Perhaps it had always been this way, but your eyes saw it differently. Your first task for the day was to meet with Lord Alaric in his study, where he often discussed matters of governance and strategy. You made your way there slowly, each step a reminder that what lay ahead would be crucial not only for you, but also for those around you. As you entered the room, Lord Alaric looked up from his papers, offering a nod of acknowledgement. "Good morning," you said, attempting to keep your voice steady despite the butterflies in your stomach. "Morning," he replied, setting aside what he was reading. "What brings you here today?" You hesitated for just a moment before speaking, knowing that every word would carry weight now. "I've been thinking about our discussions on efficiency and the role of technology." Lord Alaric's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to parse your words. You continued, more confidently this time. "In order to better serve you and the castle, I believe we should implement a new system for managing supplies and resources." His expression softened slightly, a hint of approval in his eyes. "An interesting idea," he said slowly. "Tell me more about it." For the next hour, you laid out your plan, how integrating digital records could streamline inventory management, reduce waste, and free up time for other critical tasks. As you spoke, Lord Alaric listened intently, occasionally nodding in agreement or asking questions that pushed you to think further. The conversation flowed smoothly, a testament not only to the effectiveness of your proposal, but also to the growing trust between you. By the end of it, there was an almost tangible sense of progress in the air, a small victory, perhaps, but one that felt significant nonetheless. As you stood up, preparing to leave, Lord Alaric placed his hand on your shoulder gently. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Your insights are valuable." A warm feeling spread through you at those words, a reminder of why this path mattered so much. You left the study with renewed purpose. Your decision had sparked not just one but many changes in how things were done here within these ancient walls. As you made your way back to your chambers, passing through corridors lined with tapestries and portraits, each step felt lighter than before. The castle seemed less like a fortress of stone and more akin to home, a place where people worked together towards common goals rather than merely existing in their respective roles. Determined resolve settled over you once again, as the morning sunlight streamed through windows long shuttered against it. Today was just one small day, but today could lead to so much else, new beginnings, perhaps even a new way of life within these ancient walls where every sunrise brought with it endless possibilities. The warmth of the castle's stone walls enveloped you like a hug from an old friend, its dampness lingering on your skin even as the sun began to dip below the horizon. You carried a lantern in one hand and a small cloth bag filled with tools for unlocking doors and peering into dark corners in the other. The air smelled of stale hay mixed with something more pungent, a hint of decay that clung stubbornly like an unwelcome guest. Your breath misted gently before you, each exhalation painting the cool stone floor with tiny water droplets. The weight of your lantern was reassuring as it swung from side to side, casting long shadows on the uneven cobblestone path leading down into the castle's forgotten basement. The path had been barely visible under layers of dust and debris, but now you could see its familiar contours, narrow and winding, with low stone walls that seemed to press in close enough for a whispering wind to carry your thoughts between them. Every step echoed softly, like footsteps on an old stage where time itself was the audience. You paused briefly at the threshold of the basement door, the air inside growing colder as you stepped down into the gloom. A faint musty odor wafted up from below, mingling with the scent of old parchment and forgotten treasures. The lantern's flame flickered uncertainly in response to your movement. The walls were lined with shelves that seemed almost to reach for your hand, each one filled with jars, books, scrolls, and other artifacts that had seen better days. Dust motes danced lazily around you, as if they too were curious about the secrets hidden within these ancient confines. Your fingers brushed against a thick leather-bound book, its pages yellowed but still crisp to the touch. As you moved deeper into the basement, the light from your lantern began to grow more dim and uneven, revealing cracks in the stone floor that seemed like miniature mouths whispering dark tales of forgotten times. A heavy wooden door stood at the far end of the room, its surface pitted with age, and a small keyhole glinted faintly in the meager light. You set your lantern down carefully on one of the dusty shelves, its heat warming your hand as you worked to unlock the door. The process was slow. The rusted lock creaked under your touch, protesting against your efforts with an almost audible sigh. Once it clicked open, a draft greeted you with cold fingers that seemed eager to drag you back into the darkness. You pushed the heavy wooden door aside and stepped through, the air inside even more frigid than outside. The light from your lantern barely pierced this shadowy realm. Instead, deep shadows hid in every nook and cranny like silent sentinels waiting for their moment of attack. Your breath formed a ghostly aura around you as it condensed into tiny clouds that swirled and dissipated before they could fully form. A thick layer of dust lay on the floor, muffled underfoot with each step. The shelves were filled to bursting. Scrolls and books stood in precarious stacks, their pages yellowed and brittle. Some containers held strange objects. A clay jug partially buried in the earth, its contents long since drained away into obscurity. A few small figures of stone or wood lay scattered amidst the clutter, tiny knights on horseback, each one carved with such finesse that you could almost imagine them galloping across some forgotten battlefield. You reached out to touch one such figure, your fingers brushing against smooth stone and then a sharp edge where it had broken. The texture was cold beneath your fingertips, the weight of its history pressing down on you as if the centuries themselves sought to speak through these silent reminders. A faint echo seemed to rise from below, almost imperceptible but there, a low rumble that might have been the wind or perhaps something more. The space around you hummed with a kind of quiet power, each artifact telling its own story in hushed tones barely audible over the sound of your breathing and the lantern's slow burn. The weight of this place settled on you like an old friend, comforting yet somehow unsettling as it reminded you that beneath the surface lies more than meets the eye. In one corner sat a small chest, half buried under years of neglect. You knelt down to examine its contents. Inside were letters and documents, their ink faded but still legible if you squinted just right. The scent of aged paper filled your nostrils as you carefully lifted out each piece, feeling the slight give in the leather binding and wondering what tales these few words might hold. As night drew on, the air grew colder, and a chill began to seep through your bones despite the warmth from your lantern. Shadows lengthened and deepened, their shapes taking on grotesque forms as if they too were reaching out with unseen hands. The weight of the past seemed heavier now, pressing down not just on you, but also on this forgotten space itself. You found yourself sitting cross-legged beside a pile of books, one of which you opened to its yellowed pages. The light from your lantern cast long, flickering shadows that danced across the text, each word seeming to shift and change in front of your eyes, as if alive with hidden meanings waiting to be uncovered. A small fire crackled nearby, its flames casting a warm glow on everything within reach. The air was thick with dust, each breath drawing tiny motes into view. The sound of distant creaks echoed softly through the room, mingling with the soft hissing of your lantern's flame. Your mind wandered back to earlier days when you first arrived here, fresh and eager to learn what secrets these old walls held. You reached out a hand to feel the texture of one of the books, its pages brittle under your touch. A small moth fluttered past, its wings barely visible in the dim light before they settled on another pile of papers nearby. The weight of this knowledge, this chance to uncover hidden truths and perhaps even rewrite history itself, began to take hold. As you sat there surrounded by centuries of forgotten stories and silent objects, a feeling began to grow within you, a mix of excitement and apprehension that made your chest tighten slightly. You knew that what lay ahead was not just the discovery of new facts, but also the potential for change, perhaps even a chance at rewriting your own destiny. The weight of this place seemed almost tangible now, pressing down on every thought and sensation as if it too were aware of its power to shape lives. A soft breeze carried through the room, rustling papers gently and sending dust motes swirling in intricate patterns before they settled again into their quiet slumber. In the dim light cast by your lantern, you could almost see the faces of those who had lived here long ago, kings and queens, scholars and soldiers, all now reduced to nothing more than echoes in this forgotten basement. Their stories lay buried beneath layers of dust and time, waiting for someone like yourself to uncover them. The weight of history pressed down on you as if it too were alive, each moment stretching out into an endless series of possibilities. And yet, even amidst the shadows and the silence, a spark of hope flickered. What if your discoveries here could lead not just to new knowledge, but also to real change? What if this humble basement held within its walls the key to unlocking doors long thought closed? As you sat there surrounded by centuries-old whispers, the weight of everything around you seemed to balance on an invisible fulcrum. The air grew even colder as night deepened outside, yet inside these ancient walls, a warmth began to spread, warmth not just from your lantern, but also from the knowledge that what lay ahead held the promise of something truly extraordinary. In this moment, surrounded by shadows and whispers, you felt both humbled and empowered, a mere candle in an immense darkness, yet one with the potential to ignite a flame that could change everything. As you descended into the bowels of the ancient castle with nothing but your lantern for light and company, the air grew thick with dust and whispers that seemed to coalesce around every corner. The stone walls were cold against your skin, their surface etched with stories from ages past, stories only hinted at by the occasional chisel marks or faint outline of a long-forgotten symbol. The staircase creaked ominously underfoot as you made your way down further into the darkness, each step echoing like thunder in the vast expanse. You paused momentarily to catch your breath and adjust the wick on your lantern, its flickering light casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls and floor. It was then that a low groan broke through the silence, a sound that seemed almost alive, as if the very stone itself were breathing. Curiosity piqued, you pressed onward, guided by nothing more than an inexplicable pull toward what lay ahead. The air grew colder with each step, until finally, after descending into a cavernous room that seemed to stretch out infinitely in all directions, your lantern illuminated a door set deep within the wall. It was ancient and heavy, adorned with intricate carvings that told of battles fought and lost long ago. A draft swept through as you pushed open the door, revealing a hidden chamber filled with objects both mundane and mystical. Tables lined one side, covered in scrolls and inkwells, while another section held an assortment of tools and weapons, each piece meticulously arranged, as if waiting for its purpose to be discovered once more. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate chest, its lid slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse into what lay inside. As your lantern cast light upon it, you found yourself drawn irresistibly closer. The objects within were unlike anything you had ever seen before. Ancient texts written in languages long forgotten, intricately crafted instruments of music and science, and artifacts that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. You reached out tentatively to touch one such artifact, a small obsidian mirror that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As your fingers brushed the surface, a vision unfolded before you, not just any scene, but a glimpse into the very soul of this castle and those who had lived here long ago. It was as if time itself had paused for an instant, allowing you a peek at a world that existed beyond the confines of mere history. The image shifted and faded, leaving behind only a strange feeling in your chest, a mix of awe and something else, harder to define but no less potent. You closed the mirror carefully and placed it back into its spot among other treasures, each item telling a silent story of its own. As you turned to leave, another presence caught your attention, footsteps echoing from the corridor outside. Heart pounding, you quickly straightened up and readjusted your lantern before stepping out of the hidden chamber. The steps had stopped just beyond the door, but their source remained unknown. A chill ran down your spine as you realized that perhaps this was only the beginning, a discovery that would challenge everything you thought you knew about these ancient walls. With renewed determination, you made your way back up to the surface, ready to share with others what lay hidden in the castle's forgotten basement, a testament to a past both mysterious and profound. The weight of your cloak pressed down upon you like an old friend as you made your way back to the warmth of the castle's main hall. The air was thick with a sweet, musty scent, a mixture of damp stone and something more subtle, almost like aged parchment or perhaps dried herbs from the gardens above. It clung to you, reluctant to let go even after your journey through the cold, drafty basement. You pushed open the heavy wooden door that led into the main hall with a creaking sound, barely noticeable over the soft murmurs of conversation and laughter filtering up from the feast below. The warmth enveloped you like an old blanket, drawing you in closer to the hearth where a large fire crackled merrily, throwing shadows across the room. You let your cloak slip off with a sigh of relief, dropping it onto one of the benches near the fire. The wood was cool and inviting under your fingers as you straightened up, stretching out after that long descent into the cold basement below. Your muscles protested softly from the exertion, but were quickly soothed by the heat. A soft, almost imperceptible breeze wafted through a small window high above, carrying with it the faint sound of music and merriment. It was a gentle reminder that life continued on in other parts of the castle, far removed from your recent foray into its hidden depths. You settled onto one of the wooden benches near the fire, allowing yourself to be cocooned by the warmth. The soft crackle of the logs added to the rhythm of the evening, like a lullaby that would soon have you drifting off to sleep. But first, there were things to share with those who had not yet ventured into the castle's forgotten basement. With renewed determination, you made your way over to where several of the younger servants and some curious nobles gathered around a small group by the fire. Your audience was ready, eyes wide with interest, faces eager for tales that might rival anything told in the grand hall above. They were young enough to find wonder in the mundane, old enough to appreciate the mysteries waiting just beyond their everyday lives. You began your tales softly, almost whispering as you sat down beside them. In a place where time seemed to slow, where shadows danced and secrets whispered, I found three things every servant hid from their master. The first thing was not so much hidden, but rather disguised in plain sight. You pointed upwards towards the high windows that let in just enough light to cast dancing patterns on the walls around you. Have you ever seen a castle without its stones? Without them, there would be nothing here. You paused for effect, letting their eyes follow your gesture. These stones are not just solid and immovable, you continued gently. They hold within them stories of those who came before us, stories of hardship, laughter, and the quiet strength required to keep a castle running. Every stone is a piece in this grand puzzle, each one carrying its own weight. A young noble girl leaned forward, her eyes shining with curiosity. But what if someone found out? What would happen then? She asked softly. You smiled at her and replied, in the end, it doesn't matter who knows or who finds out. The truth is often better left unspoken, for it's in the silence between words that real power lies. The second thing you shared was a bit more tangible, a small wooden box you had brought with you from your journey into the basement. As you opened it, revealing its contents to their eager gazes, you explained, this is not just any box, it contains 3 tokens, each representing one of those hidden things I spoke about. You carefully passed out these tokens among them. 2 were simple wooden carvings shaped like keys, and the third was a small piece of parchment. Each carried its own weight, a reminder of what you had found. These are not meant to be shown or spoken of, you warned softly as they examined their gifts. They represent secrets that should remain in your hearts, tales whispered only when the stars align just right. The key tokens were handed back with reverence. Each servant wore them around their necks, tucking them away where no one could see but themselves. The parchment was carefully folded and kept safe as well. Lastly, you spoke of the third hidden thing, a feeling that lingered in every corner of the castle, often unnoticed until it had grown too strong to ignore. This is not something tangible like a token or an object, you explained gently, but rather a state of being, something that can be both comforting and unsettling. You took their hands one by one, your fingers interlacing with theirs, as if drawing them into the very core of the castle's spirit. When everything else feels heavy and oppressive, you began softly, there is always something lighter than air, a hope or a dream that keeps us moving forward. A young boy looked up at you with wide eyes, his face reflecting both wonder and fear. Can we really keep such things hidden? He whispered. You squeezed his hand, reassuringly. Yes, for sometimes it's the smallest truths that carry the greatest weight, you replied gently. In our hearts lies what truly matters, what keeps us going when all else seems lost. As your tale drew to a close, and the fire began to die down, casting long shadows across their faces, you took one last look around the gathering. The air was thick with anticipation, the whispers of secrets yet untold filling the silence. Remember, you said softly, these are things best kept hidden, buried deep within your own hearts until just the right moment arrives. With a gentle pat on each of their backs and a final squeeze to those hands that had listened so intently, you rose from your seat. The warmth of the fire still held onto you like an old friend as you made your way towards where you could finally rest. The sound of distant laughter grew softer with every step, blending seamlessly into the quiet of the castle's main hall. Shadows danced across the walls, casting long fingers that seemed almost to reach out and cradle you in their embrace. The weight of the world slowly melted away as the last wisps of warmth from the fire wrapped around your shoulders. You sank down onto a nearby bench near the hearth, letting yourself be cocooned by its gentle heat once more. The soft crackle of logs and occasional snap of branches outside provided a soothing rhythm that lured you ever closer to sleep's welcoming arms. As you finally allowed exhaustion to take over, your head rested gently against the cool stone wall behind you. The warmth from the fire seeped through every pore, wrapping itself around you like an old friend. And there, in the soft glow of fading light and the sweet scent of wood smoke on the air, you drifted off into a peaceful slumber, a gentle smile playing across your lips, as if remembering all that had been shared that evening. The night was still young when you first stirred, not with the harshness of waking, but with the gentle tug of dawn's fingers on your eyelids. You blinked awake to find yourself in the familiar chamber of your quarters. Its stone walls and tapestried bed were comforting reminders that this strange, foreign place had become home. The room was bathed in a soft light from an open window, casting long shadows over the floor as if nature herself had woven them with her own hands. With a quiet sigh, you sat up slowly, the weight of last night's events settling into your bones like old friends. You remembered the banquet hall's grandeur, the laughter and conversation that filled it, the stories shared between master and servant in ways that seemed almost too intimate for such a formal setting. Your fingers traced the rough edges of the wooden chair you had occupied just hours ago as they listened to tales of distant lands, forgotten heroes, and lost loves. You rose from your bed with practiced ease, moving through the motions that were now second nature, gathering blankets, tucking them neatly into their folds, hanging a woolen cloak over the back of the door. As you moved about, your thoughts wandered, reflecting on the day's revelations. 3 things in particular had been shared last night: a secret whispered between master and servant, an unspoken truth that lingered just beyond polite conversation, a hidden longing for something more, buried beneath layers of duty and obligation, and finally, a piece of knowledge that could change everything but was best left unsaid. With each step you took towards the door leading to your duties in the castle's heart, these thoughts tugged at the fabric of your reality. The stone walls seemed to whisper back, as if they too carried their own secrets, hushed conversations about times past and futures uncertain. You paused by a corner where a small vase held dried flowers, its petals faded but still bearing witness to better days. Your master's quarters lay just beyond this door, a place of privilege and mystery that you were rarely allowed to enter. The thought made your heart quicken with both anticipation and dread. Today would be the first time in months when you might find yourself within those thresholds again, perhaps even sharing a private moment between servant and lord. As you approached the door, it creaked slightly on its hinges, drawing your attention for just an instant before you quickly pushed open the heavy oak to reveal the narrow corridor beyond. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting scenes of hunts and battles, each one telling its own story in faded colors. You walked carefully along this silent path, feeling a mix of reverence and unease, as if stepping into another world entirely. Your destination was near, a small, secluded room where your master often retreated to contemplate, or simply enjoy the quiet solitude that he seldom found elsewhere within these walls. It was said by some that even here, in his own space, there were still ears listening and eyes watching, yet for a moment you allowed yourself to believe it might be different. You pushed open another door, stepping into what appeared at first glance to be an ordinary sitting area with plush seating arranged around a small table. But as your eyes adjusted to the dim light, something caught them, a faint glimmer of metal from under one cushion, half hidden but unmistakable. Your heart raced. This was it, the piece you had been searching for. You reached down and carefully pulled aside the fabric, revealing not just an object but a memory, a small dagger with its hilt carved in intricate patterns that spoke of skill and care far beyond what would be expected from a servant's handiwork. The blade itself was dull, worn by age, but still unmistakably sharp. With trembling fingers, you picked up the weapon, feeling its weight and balance. This had once been part of your master's own collection, a gift or perhaps a family heirloom hidden away where he could keep it close yet safe from prying eyes. The knowledge that such an item lay within these walls sent shivers down your spine, mixing fear with wonder. You stood there for what felt like hours, but was likely mere minutes, considering the implications of this discovery. This single object held the key to understanding not just one secret, but perhaps many, each piece fitting together into a larger picture that could reshape both their worlds. Yet revealing it now might cost you more than either of you bargained for. Finally, with great care, you replaced the dagger where you had found it and left the room as quietly as you entered, your mind racing with possibilities. The day stretched before you like an endless tapestry waiting to be woven, threads of truth, lies, and hidden desires all tangled together in a complex web that neither master nor servant fully understood. As dawn broke further over the horizon, casting long golden beams through the window, you stepped back into your duties, knowing that today would be different. The weight of what had been shared lay heavily on your shoulders, but for now there was still work to do, dishes to clean, floors to sweep, and perhaps most importantly, a secret to keep. The weight of a heavy wooden bowl settled into your hands, its smooth surface cool against the warmth of your skin. You lifted it to your nose and inhaled deeply. The scent was faint but familiar, an earthy mix of grain and smoke that lingered from yesterday's baking. A slight ache started at the base of your neck as you turned slightly, trying to find a comfortable position among the piles of dishes on the table. The room was quiet, except for the occasional creaking floorboards underfoot, like whispers from an old friend. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting flickering shadows over the walls and playing with your hair strands as they brushed against your forehead. The warmth enveloped you, a comforting embrace that seemed to slow down time. You set down the bowl carefully on the table, feeling its weight shift slightly under your fingers. A small wooden spoon lay beside it, waiting for you to pick up where you left off earlier in the day, cleansing each dish as if they were precious jewels hidden within the castle's storerooms. The task was tedious and endless, but somehow, with every bowl, the weight on your shoulders lightened a little more. The pile of dirty dishes seemed never-ending, a mountain of crockery that had accumulated over days of feasts and banquets. Each dish held stories, spoons used to scoop out succulent stews, plates holding crusty loaves of bread from the bakehouse, mugs filled with spiced wine at night. As you washed them, the tales blended into one another like old friends sharing secrets around a fire. The water in the bowl was tepid, but not icy cold. You dipped your fingers in it first to check its temperature, feeling relief wash over as the coolness seeped through your skin and cooled down your hands. The water had been drawn from the well outside and brought here by young boys whose faces you could barely see over the edge of a bucket. Each lad was responsible for filling one vessel before passing it on to another until every dish was rinsed clean. A small cloth, damp but not dripping, rested beside each bowl waiting its turn. The cotton felt soft against your fingers as you picked it up and began scrubbing away at grime that had built up over days of use. Your movements were slow and deliberate, no rush here in the castle kitchens where time seemed to stretch into eternity. The sound of water splashing echoed softly, a constant reminder of the task ahead. Each splash mingled with the soft hiss as soap bubbles formed on the surface of the water before popping one by one like tiny silver bells. The smell of lavender from your scrubbing sponge wafted through the air, its sweet fragrance mixing with that earthy scent you first smelled in the bowl. As you worked, the fire crackled louder and brighter, drawing the light across the room in patches of orange and gold. Shadows danced on the walls like small spirits playing hide-and-seek, making your fingers feel a bit uneasy when they flitted over them. You paused for a moment to let your eyes adjust to this soft play of light and dark. A wooden spoon caught your eye, resting near an empty dish waiting its turn in the queue. It was old, with chips along one side from years of use, but still sturdy enough to serve another round of washing. You picked it up carefully by the handle, feeling a sense of connection to all those who had held this same tool before you, a thread linking past and present. The weight of what had been shared lay heavily on your shoulders, but for now there was still work to do, dishes to clean, floors to sweep, and perhaps most importantly, a secret to keep. You returned to the bowl with renewed focus, determined not to let anything distract you from this task at hand. A small jar of salt sat beside another dish, its glass lid slightly cloudy from use, but still holding just enough grains to make your work easier. A pinch here or there turned each dish into something more than merely clean. Salt added a final touch that made them shine like they had been polished by the finest hands. You sprinkled it carefully over the surface of each bowl, watching as its crystal grains settled onto the porcelain in perfect little mounds. The fire crackled again, drawing your attention to where light spilled into the kitchen from the hall beyond. A thin layer of soot clung to the walls around the hearth, a testament to countless hours spent tending this flame night after lonely night. The warmth it offered was both comforting and strange, something you couldn't quite explain but knew on some deep level held meaning. A gentle hum filled your ears as you worked, the rhythmic sound of water splashing from bowl to bucket, the occasional clink of a spoon hitting against its mate in their resting place. It was a soothing lullaby that seemed to wash away any remaining stresses of the day, leaving behind only the present moment and this singular task. The pile of dishes began to shrink around you as each one found its way back into service, cleaner than before, but still holding stories within them. The last bowl stood out slightly from the rest, a stubborn holdover from earlier that seemed determined not to give in just yet. You approached it with steady hands and mindful intent, knowing this was no small feat. A final scrub of the sponge across its surface revealed a thin layer of grime, something you had missed before, or perhaps something fresh from today's feast. With a deep breath, you reached for the bowl once more, applying just enough pressure to lift away any remaining traces without breaking the delicate balance it held. The water ran clear now, free from all but the faintest hint of dirt. The last dish stood empty beside you, its cleanliness a stark contrast to what had been before, a reminder that with effort and attention, even the most challenging tasks could be overcome. You stepped back for a moment, letting your eyes wander over the cleared table and the warm hearth before settling on the spoon once more. It was time to move forward, dishes cleaned, work done, but still so much left unsaid between you and this castle kitchen. As you picked up the wooden spoon, its weight felt lighter somehow, a small victory in a larger game of secrets kept and stories untold. The bowl was handed over to another set of hands to continue their journey through time, just as yours had done for countless others before. The fire crackled one last time, drawing your attention back from the past into the present. Shadows danced more freely now under its soft glow, casting long lines across the floor and up the walls in playful patterns. The warmth spread outwards from it like a gentle hug, wrapping around you and pulling you gently towards rest. A small pillow was placed on the ground beside you, a simple thing made of linen that provided just enough cushion to ease your body down onto its surface. You settled carefully, feeling the softness against your skin as you let go of all tension from day's work. The weight of the spoon slipped into an empty space at your side, another step in a long journey, but one that felt almost complete now. The room fell silent around you, save for occasional sounds from outside, the distant creaking of wooden doors or the soft whisper of wind through the castle walls. Each sound blended together to create a soothing lullaby that seemed to wash away any remaining worries or concerns. You closed your eyes, letting yourself be carried by this gentle hum into dreams that promised relief and rest. As you lay there, cradled in the warmth of the hearth's glow, thoughts began to drift through your mind, memories of days past, stories whispered between walls, secrets kept for generations. Each one was a thread woven tightly together with those around it, forming a tapestry that told not just of this castle, but also of all who had called it home. The weight on your shoulders lightened further still as you drifted closer to sleep, the final battle won in the quietude of an empty bowl and clean dish. Here, amidst the whispers of firelight and the stories they carried, there was peace, a place where even the most burdensome tasks could find their end. As darkness enveloped everything around you, a sense of calm settled deep within your being, like the final note struck on a harp string after a long day's music. You lay still, letting yourself be drawn into dreams that promised rest and rejuvenation for tomorrow's challenges yet to come. The warmth of a lit candle bathed your room in soft yellow light, casting long shadows that danced along the walls like old friends reuniting after years apart. You could almost feel their presence, these silent companions whispering tales from centuries past. The air was thick, with the scent of spiced wine and fresh bread, mingling with the faint tang of candle wax, making your nose twitch in anticipation. The weight of what had been shared lay heavily on your shoulders, but for now, there was still work to do, dishes to clean, floors to sweep, and perhaps most importantly, a secret to keep. Your hands were already familiar with these tasks. The scrub brush felt like an old friend as you dipped it into the soapy water and began the slow, methodical process of cleaning the stone tiles. The sound of dripping water echoed softly in the quiet room, providing a rhythmic lullaby that helped calm your thoughts. Each drop landed on the floor with a tiny splash, creating a pattern like raindrops on leaves. The scent of vinegar mixed with the warmth from the candle created an almost comforting aroma, as if you were wrapped in a cozy hug. You dipped the brush into the bucket again and moved to the next tile, your fingers tracing the rough surface before they met it. The stone was cool beneath your touch, its texture coarse yet somehow smooth after years of gentle wear. As you swept the remaining dirt from one area, another memory surfaced, this time a joke shared by Sir Edmund during his visits. Sir Edmund had always teased about the old castle's secrets, but he never revealed them himself. You smiled at the thought, remembering how his laughter would fill the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. The weight of keeping silent felt lighter now that you were surrounded by such familiar warmth and comfort. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, sending a gentle heat over your skin as if it were whispering promises of rest. You pushed back from where you knelt to sit on the edge of the bed, feeling the rough wool against your legs. The bed was soft enough for a pillow, but not so cushioned that you sank into an uncomfortable slumber. Your mind drifted to thoughts of what might happen if someone else discovered this secret. Would it change everything? Could it break something irreplaceable between those who held such knowledge together? These questions lingered like shadows, casting doubt across your mind's calm waters. Yet the warmth and stillness around you were a powerful balm against them. A soft creak echoed from down the corridor, far too quiet to be anyone else, but perhaps a stray mouse or two in search of evening treats. The sound was barely noticeable above the hum of your own breathing and heartbeat. You closed your eyes for a moment, letting out a slow breath as you listened to the silence. As you opened them again, you noticed how everything seemed to blend together. A faint hint of candle smoke, the distant glow from the hearth, the soft sound of water dripping, and it felt almost magical. Here in this room, among these walls that had stood for centuries, there was a sense of belonging and safety. It wasn't just about keeping secrets, it was also about being part of something bigger than yourself. Your thoughts turned to Lady Alara, who lay asleep nearby with the same secret tucked away safely within her heart. You imagined how she would feel when dawn broke, when another day began its cycle, and yet again they would share this quiet vigil together. The weight still lingered, but was now more like a familiar comfort than an oppressive burden. The candle continued to burn steadily, casting light that seemed almost magical in the dimness of night. Each flame danced gracefully, playing with shadows that shifted and swayed as if alive themselves. You picked up your comb from where it lay on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing its smooth wooden surface before running them through your hair. The weight of keeping this secret felt strange now, like carrying a heavy stone, but one you didn't mind holding for too long, because there was purpose and meaning in it. As you worked methodically to tidy up the room, each task became more than just chores. They were small acts of defiance against uncertainty, reminders that even in darkness, light still shone. Your hands moved deftly over your hair until it lay smooth and neat, then you placed the comb back on its perch. The silence felt almost palpable now, filled with the weight of everything left unsaid, yet understood between you and Lady Alara. You stretched slowly, easing into a more comfortable position before settling down to rest. As you leaned against your pillow, closing your eyes for what would be only a moment's slumber, the warmth wrapped around you like an old friend returning home after years away. The candle flickered gently, its light growing dimmer as if it was saying goodnight too. You felt a sense of peace settle over you, deep and soothing. Just before drifting off to sleep, there was one last thought that tugged at the edges of your consciousness. What would happen when this secret finally came out? Would everything change for better or worse? Could they still hold onto each other despite all that might unfold? But these thoughts drifted away into the darkness as you allowed yourself to fall deeper under the spell of warmth and rest. The soft hum of the hearth, the gentle sound of water dripping, and the comforting weight of your bed lured you gently into a peaceful slumber, cradling you in its arms until morning light would break once more. And with that, you lay down fully, letting all the day's work and worries slip away as you finally allowed yourself to be enveloped by sleep. Tonight you've traveled through misty corridors where shadows whispered secrets of buttered nights and midnight oil dripped like distant fires in the quiet tides going out. In those halls, molds grew unseen on walls that held stories of silent guards and forgotten basements holding mysteries yet to be told. Through it all, a thread wove the tapestry of trust betrayed by silence, hidden truths within private chambers, and the eternal dance between life and death. The journey is not just about what was found or lost, but in how each step resonated with the echoes of time itself. Each chapter you've read holds a piece to this puzzle, connecting in ways only the quietest corners can understand. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from. As you drift towards sleep, let go of the details, let them sink below the surface of thought, becoming part of the long patience of the earth. In dreams, memories blend with time itself, whispering tales that are as old as the mountains and as new as a morning dewdrop on an open leaf.